love hanging out with my nieces and nephews. I don't have kids of my own yet, but my nieces and nephews are enough. They are a handful, but they are the sweetest kids ever. And anytime that I get a chance to hang out with them, I do. And today, I've invited them over to go camping in my new backyard. So like, Auntie, we want to see your new house. I'm like, okay, come over, let's do something fun. So the first thing on our campfire menu is brisket chili. I am pulling out all the stops for these kids. They are gonna have the best chili they've ever tasted. I have a 3-pound brisket here that I'm cutting into cubes, and I like using brisket for this recipe. It adds another layer of texture instead of that typical ground meat, and it also adds a richness of flavor. I'm gonna season it with my house seasoning, which you know is paprika, onion powder, garlic powder, salt, and pepper. I'm gonna sear it off in my Dutch oven and add the beans and cook it slow. So by the time the kids get here, it'll be nice and tender. So the next thing I'm gonna do is season my brisket with my house seasoning. Some smoked paprika to help bring out that smoky flavor, and some brown sugar to help caramelize this brisket. I like a little sweetness in my chili, which is odd for some people, but just a little bit of sweetness goes a long way in chili. When I was younger, I always thought chili was spicy because of all of the spices that you have in chili, but it doesn't have to be. And so because these are kids eating it, I like to add just a little bit of sugar so it won't be as spicy. Just give it a mix. I can smell it already. All right, so I've seasoned my brisket. I'm gonna wash my hands. All right, let me grab my brisket. I'm gonna oil my pan with a little canola oil so the brisket doesn't stick. I've been heating up my Dutch oven so it's nice and hot so I get a really nice sear on this brisket. Voila! Smells well seasoned already. So all I'm doing is just searing all sides of this brisket, and I'm also creating flavor at the bottom of the pan, because once this stuff browns, that's gonna create a layer of it looks like burnt on stuff, but it's not. It's actually really great seasoning at the bottom of this pan. And the fancy culinary term for this is called fond. So not only am I searing and creating a coat on the brisket, I'm also creating the first layer of flavor. All right, so I've seared one side, and look at this. Look at that beautiful layer of crunchy goodness on this brisket. When you're searing, you're also locking in the moisture and the flavor in your meat as well. While that side sears, I'm gonna cut up my veggie. I have a bell pepper, onion, and garlic. So the great thing about this recipe, not only is it good for cold weather, a little chilly weather. Here in Charleston, we have seasonably warm weather, but it does still get chilly at night. And when you think about chili, you want to eat chili. It warms you up in the inside. Something about those spices. So it's the best thing to eat while camping. So I've got my onion chop, if you can tell by the tears. And now I'm roughly chopping 2 cloves of garlic. I'm gonna finish searing off my brisket, get these veggies cooked up, get the beans in, and let it cook low and slow for a few hours. So let me take out this brisket. It's so beautiful. And then that brown sugar just also adds a nice layer of just like caramelization on this brisket. I'd eat a bowl of that, brisket bites. I can eat chili for a few days. Make a big batch on a Sunday. I'll be done with it by Wednesday. Oh, and guess what, cousins? Not only am I making chili, I'm also making mini corn muffins to go with the chili. See, I like to crumble up that cornbread inside that chili. Woo! Now we're talking. Or if you like, you can also eat it with rice. But even though I am geechee to my heart, it's nothing better than cornbread and chili, not rice and chili. But I mean, either one works, but to each his own. I've seared off all of my meat. Now I'm gonna add in my veggies, the onion, bell pepper, and garlic. A little salt to help bring out some of that moisture and soften these veggies up. Grab a spoon, and I'm just gonna cook the veggies down until they become soft. and the onion comes slightly translucent. And as I'm cooking, I'm scraping up all of those brown bits at the bottom to unlock all of that flavor. Add a tablespoon of beef bouillon. Now this stuff, you can find this on your soup aisle, and I like using this to enhance the beef flavor. And it's just overall a great seasoning for dishes, especially like for stews and chilies. All right, so now I'm gonna add my kidney beans, or my dark kidney beans, my light red, black beans, and I like using a variety of beans, not only for color, for texture and presentation. I just love beans. I've got some diced tomatoes here. I like a chunky chili. I'm gonna also add some crushed tomato for more of that tomato flavor and texture. All right, give it a mix. Oh, it smells so good. This chili with all of the tomatoes, the onions, the garlic, you can only imagine. I'm also gonna add some water, a little chili powder, and my secret, a pinch of cinnamon. Most people don't realize that cinnamon can be used in savory dishes too. Cinnamon adds another layer of depth to a dish without adding spicy heat. Ooh, I smell the cinnamon. As soon as it hit that liquid, oh my gosh. And now I'm just gonna add my brisket back into the pot. I'm gonna stir that brisket back into my pot. So I'm gonna let this simmer covered for a few hours. I'm gonna cook it until the kids get here. So the longer it cooks, the more that brisket is gonna break down and just melt with those beans. And I may take a little taste before the kids get here because this smells incredible. I've chopped one yellow onion. Just gonna put this in my bowl. Whew. I don't know if I'm tearing up because I'm happy that my sister's having a baby, or that onion is just really strong. I have 2 carrots that I've peeled here. The carrots are gonna add a little sweetness, a little pop of color. And of course, you know, carrots are good for you, so why not add it? That looks good. I'm gonna dump it in my bowl here with my onion. I'm gonna use 1 stalk of celery, get it as fine as possible. So the celery is not necessarily gonna add like texture because of course I'm gonna cook it down. So what you're gonna get is more so of like an earthy flavor. And again, if you don't wanna do this manually, you can always use your food processor. All right, and I have 2 cloves of garlic that I'm gonna also mince up. All right, I'm gonna head over here to the stove top, saute my veggies. So I have a small Dutch oven here over a medium-high heat with a little canola oil. And now I'm gonna add my veggies. I also like to hit it with a little salt to help draw out some of that water in there. So I thought it'd be really cool to make a soup, something warm, something comforting. This yellow split pea soup is that. All right, now to get that iconic color, I'm using turmeric. Turmeric is a great anti-inflammatory agent. It keeps the water off the knees. It's good for arthritis. And I tell you, turmeric goes far. You don't need to use a lot of it. And the reason I'm adding it in right now as I'm cooking the veggies, because things like turmeric and curry need to bloom. When you bloom things like turmeric and curry, it kind of turns down that tart flavor that you get from it. So the veggies are cooked down, the turmeric has bloomed and blossomed. Now I'm gonna add in my split peas. Give it a stir. Oh, it's pretty already. And if you guys don't know, yellow is my favorite color. I have a container here of vegetable broth. Wouldn't be a soup without some type of liquid. I'm gonna add the entire quart. About a tablespoon of thyme here, and thyme and turmeric, they just go really well together. So that's about a tablespoon of thyme. Man, this smells incredible. Like, I want this now, but I can't because I gotta let the peas cook. So I'm gonna cover this and let it hang out here for about 40 minutes or until it becomes tender. While that's doing that, I gotta get this sour cream ready. But it wouldn't be me if I didn't take it up a notch. I'm using full fat sour cream. We are making a lighter meal, but the full fat sour cream won't hurt this at all. I mean, what is the grams in here? Like 6 grams per 1/2 tablespoon. I mean, that's good. A 1/4 teaspoon of smoked paprika. It's gonna give that split pea soup a nice little smoky yet cooling flavor. My mom would always make her split pea soup with some type of smoked meat, like a ham hock or smoked turkey. And because we're not using any type of smoked meat, you get the smokiness from the sour cream. The best of both worlds. So I'm gonna let this chill in the fridge while the split pea soup continues to do its thing. Ooh, that smells good in here.
Let me try this.
Mm.
You know how we say that's hitting.
That's hitting. It's busting. Some green and orange peppers that I've cut little jack-o'-lantern faces on, and then I'm gonna take the insides out and then stuff it with that jambalaya and then roast them in the oven. That's so cute. All right, I have diced some onions, some green bell pepper. Now I'm going to dice some celery. So I'm starting off with the jambalaya, the stuffing. Jambalaya is the perfect filling for the peppers. I mean, we're in rice country. You gotta add some rice. Dice celery to my peppers and onions. I'm adding canola oil to sweat my veggies first. Bell pepper, onion, and celery. Add a little butter, a little extra fat, and a few pinches of salt. All right, so I've sweated my veggies down just a bit. Now I'm going to add my andouille sausage. And I want to brown this sausage so I can get some of that flavor to come out. Okay. All right, to this, I'm going to season some more by using a little Cajun seasoning. Paprika, oregano, salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, almost very similar to my house seasoning with a little bit more kick. Now I'm going to add my rice that I've already rinsed. That's 1.5 cups of white rice. I'm toasting my rice, which is gonna allow it to soak up all of the flavors that's gonna be in this pot. Start adding my liquid with 1.5 cups of water and 1.5 cups of chicken stock. And I have 2 bay leaves. I am going to cover this and let it simmer for about 20 to 25 minutes or until all of the liquid has absorbed. Now I have to get my bell pepper and cut out my little jack-o'-lanterns. So I've done a few, but I'm gonna show you how I did it. So you take a paring knife. You're gonna cut little triangles for the eyes, right? You guys have carved pumpkins before, so we're doing like the same thing here. Same idea. Make a little dot in the center for the nose. Then you wanna slice across for the mouth, okay? So 2 eyes, the nose, and the mouth, you see? All right, so what I'm gonna do next is carve out the top. Slice off the top, take a spoon and take out the ribs, the things inside, all of the seeds. This is where I'm gonna put that rice. Make sure you save the lid because you can kind of put the lid on top once we put that rice in. So my jambalaya has been cooking for about 25 minutes. Ooh, it smells so good. I'm gonna give it a quick fluff. Ho ho! It smells like Louisiana here. The spices, the bay leaf, the earthiness from that, and the andouille sausage. Before I add this to my peppers, I'm gonna add some green onion. It gives it that mild onion flavor and a little color. Now I'm gonna stuff my peppers with this jambalaya. All right, I'm just stuffing it to the rim. When the peppers roast in the oven, it's gonna soften up, and this entire thing is gonna be edible. And it's so cool to use peppers because peppers are already in the dish. Put the top back on. Add a little water to the bottom of this casserole dish. That's gonna help create some steam and cook those peppers. Cover with a little foil. My oven is preheated to 350. I'm gonna bake this for about 45 minutes. My pepper lanterns are done. The great reveal. Ooh, those are beautiful. The colors are so saturated. Woo, it's Halloween. I'm using some chicken thighs, some root veggies I had in the fridge. I got some rainbow carrots, I got parsnips. I'm using beets and onions. I am slicing my vegetables into bite-sized pieces, and I've also peeled all of my veggies as well. The next thing I'm going to slice is a red onion. And a red onion adds more onion flavor, so a big punch of onion flavor, which I really like. All right, I'm gonna add some olive oil to my bowl, and I'm gonna season my root vegetables with my house seasoning. That's some salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, and a little bit of paprika. Goes well with anything. Give it a toss. So I have 4 chicken thighs here. I'm gonna hit it with a little olive oil. So I've just added some Dijon mustard to the skin of my chicken thighs. Not only is it gonna help kind of like tenderize the chicken and give it a little tangy flavor, but it's also gonna help this seasoning stick right on top of that. Spread that Dijon mustard on both sides. And now I'm just gonna add my house seasoning. I'm gonna grab my root vegetables, my chicken. I'm gonna add a little oil to my hot skillet. I'm just gonna sear both sides of my chicken, skin side down first, and then the chicken is gonna cook through in the oven. So I've had this skillet for a very long time, so it's well seasoned. All right, so now it's time to flip my chicken thighs and let the backside sear. Look at that nice, pretty golden brown color. The cast iron just kind of absorbs flavor, especially when you're like frying something. Oh my gosh, all the oils and the seasonings and all of the brown bits that kind of get stuck in it. That's why you never should use soap in your cast iron skillet, especially when cleaning. And if you want to clean your skillet, make sure you do it right after cooking and use hot water with a stiff brush. Then use a towel to dry. Never let your cast iron sit in water, sit in soap, just ruin it. I'm gonna remove the chicken now and then add in my veggies. All right, now I'm gonna add my root veggies. So I like to saute my veggies in the same skillet right before I put it in the oven because it kind of helps the cooking process. Once you get a nice sear on it, cook it down just a little bit, it'll cook faster in the oven. Now I'm going to add my chicken back to my skillet, kind of nestle it in there. And now I have some fresh herbs that I like to add in there as well. I'm gonna add some thyme, a little rosemary, tarragon. It smells like heaven in here right now. All right, so I'm going to roast this at 400 degrees until like the chicken, till the juices in the chicken run clear and the internal temperature reaches about 165. While that roasts in the oven, I am gonna make a garlic butter sauce to pour on top. I'm gonna add about 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter. I'm gonna squeeze the juice of half of this lemon, so about 1 tablespoon. Now I'm gonna add some minced garlic, a little salt, a little black pepper, some dry sherry. Now, if you're making this for kids and you don't necessarily want them to have any alcohol, that's fine, even though most of it will cook out. But if you wanna make this for your children, you can, by all means, skip the sherry. I'm gonna roughly chop some fresh parsley. All right, so my butter sauce is done, and so is my chicken. Come on, y'all. Come on, look at that. That is good cooking right there. And it's just gorgeous. Oh yeah, get all that garlic in there. I'm smelling all of those fresh herbs. And then all that garlic does is just kind of mix in with some of those natural juices and creates a sauce for the chicken. Man, that chicken is nice and juicy and super flavorful with that house seasoning. And then that garlic lemon butter just creates the sauce that goes so well on the chicken. And don't get me started on these root veggies. Beets are so sweet. And the parsnip, oh my gosh. And I'm getting like a mouthful of garlic, which I really enjoy because I love garlic. This is such a solid dish. First thing I'm gonna make is chicken noodle soup. I am shredding this entire chicken. The wings, the thighs, the breast, but I'm not using the skin, especially like in soups and stews. It makes it really fatty and there's like a film that forms. What I usually do is just eat it as I go. I'm gonna put 1.5 cups in this bowl for my chicken noodle soup. Now I'm gonna chop up my veggies. I have 1 stalk of celery, and I'm gonna cut up this entire onion. That's pretty fine. Roughly chop some parsley. If you use dried, you wanna use a lot less. Dried herbs are much stronger than fresh. Head over to the stove and get this baby started. I'm gonna add a little olive oil to get my onions and celery started. Add a little salt to help draw some of that water out of it. I'm cooking my onions down until it becomes a little translucent, a little soft. So the onions are nice and translucent. A little garlic powder, some onion powder, a little bit of the Italian seasoning. It has basil, parsley, oregano. Last but not least, the chicken bouillon. I'm gonna use just about a tablespoon. Because I am not using a chicken stock or a chicken broth, I gotta break this down with some water. I'm using 5 cups of water. I'm basically creating my own broth. So my water and onions and everything has come to a boil. Now I'm gonna add that shredded chicken. So that's about 1.5 cups. I'm gonna also add my parsley now. Frozen peas and carrots, they get used in my house. They come in handy. This is a 16-ounce bag, so leave about that much in there. Add 1 cup of my egg noodles. Okay, that's about 1 cup. Bring it back to a boil and just cook it until the noodles get soft and they're al dente. And talk about easy and simple and inexpensive. Seafood lasagna. So I've got a container of ricotta cheese here, full fat. I'm gonna add some thawed spinach that I have kind of wrung out, took all the juice out. Got some artichoke hearts. You can find this in like a jar in your vegetable aisle. I'm gonna add some mozzarella cheese, a little salt, and some breadcrumbs. Growing up, my mom would always make lasagna. That is one of her favorite things to make. And one day she decided to get real fancy and change up the lasagna. And she made a seafood lasagna with Alfredo sauce. And I have been craving that lasagna for a long time now. All right, so I'm mixing my ricotta with my mozzarella cheese. Now I'm gonna add 1 egg. And now I'm going to zest this lemon. So I'm just combining all of my ingredients. Got the ricotta, artichoke hearts, a little mozzarella, an egg, Italian breadcrumbs, and lemon zest. And now I'm gonna cook the seafood for my seafood lasagna. I'm gonna melt a few tablespoons of butter. I'm gonna add 2 pounds of Charleston shrimp, some garlic that I've minced, and a little seafood seasoning. All right, so I'm just gonna cook my shrimp until it turns opaque. It doesn't take shrimp to cook long at all. Woo-hoo! My mom is gonna smell this as soon as she hits that porch. All right, so my shrimp is cooked. I can just eat this bowl of shrimp. So now I have some white wine here. I'm just gonna deglaze my pan. You see all that good seasoning and stuck on garlic that's at the bottom? That's gonna create a really nice essence to the seafood. A little lemon juice. I'm gonna cook this down just a little bit, reduce it by half, and then add in my crab meat. Ooh, that smells great. But you know what else smells good? The shrimp. And grab one. Quality control. This is how I feel about it. I'm gonna add my lump crab meat. Now I'm gonna add my shrimp back into my pan here. Look at that. So I'm gonna turn this off. And now I'm gonna make my bechamel. I'm gonna take unsalted butter, about 1/2 stick. I'm gonna melt this down and then add in flour. That's gonna help get this sauce nice and thick. So that looks great. Now I'm going to add 3 cups of whole milk. And I'm adding freshly grated nutmeg. Now, this is something that my mom never did. And I found throughout the years that freshly grated nutmeg just warms up the bechamel, and it gives this a little slightly like aromatic flavor. A little goes a long way with freshly grated nutmeg. 1.5 cups of Romano cheese. Romano has that kind of like that nuttiness and saltiness that you get in Parmesan cheese, just a little bit more. And this bechamel is just one of the twists on my mom's seafood lasagna. All right, so my bechamel has thickened. All right, Mom, I want to add a little bit of my bechamel sauce into that ricotta. Did I do that right?
I didn't used to do it that way, but...
I just put a little bit of the bechamel in there because it's going to help loosen up the ricotta and make it a little bit more spreadable. That's it.
Okay, I can agree with that.
The next thing I remember is you put a little sauce down at the bottom.
Always, and so it won't stick.
So a little bit down at the bottom. They have a new thing, Mom.
What is the new thing, Kardea?
It's ready to bake. You don't have to boil it. So these pasta sheets get nice and soft, like as if you would boil it, just in the oven with heat.
You know what? Even in the stores today, I still go for the ball.
Can you teach an old dog new tricks?
Roof, I guess so.
Put sauce down, spread it all over the noodles. Let's put the ricotta down next.
Looks good so far.
Can you do the honors by adding the seafood mixture?
Sure I can. Don't look over me like your grandma do. You know, that makes you nervous, you know, when we're in the kitchen and you know when your grandma does that.
Oh my gosh,
you can't stand that.
That's not what I do. Well, now I'm gonna get in here like grandma and help you out because
see?
You're not spreading enough for me.
Isn't that something? You're
You
telling
gotta
me
have
my
equal
recipe. Isn't that
You
something?
gotta have equal distribution. Mom. I didn't know how you did it. I just know it tasted good. Break it in half. Sauce, the ricotta and spinach and artichoke mixture. I'm repeating those same layers now. All right, Mom, I'm gonna top it off with the last bit of sauce. Can you top it off with the rest of the mozzarella cheese?
Okay.
Nice and even.
You telling me? Okay. Isn't that something?
I'm gonna cover my lasagna and bake it at 350 for about 30 minutes and then bake it uncovered for an additional 15 minutes, and that's gonna get it nice and browned, and you're gonna see all those bubbles on the corners.
Oh, I can't wait to see how this comes out. Hopefully it'll come out like it's supposed to.
Or better.
Really? Ooh, that looks good.
All right, it's getting there. We need some bubble and some brown. That's why you gotta take the top off. All right, Ma, you wanna see?
Yes,
You wanna
let's
see?
Let's see what it looks like.
Let's see if it looks like yours. We gotta wait to see if it tastes like yours, though.
Okay.
Ooh, look.
Oh, now it's bubbling.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, look at this, cousins.
Oh, that's pretty.
Look at that. Okay, Ma, now I have to top it off with some more parsley. A little color, a little herbiness.
Ooh.
All right, Ma, let's dig in.
Ooh, yes. Oh, that looks so good,
It's
Kardea.
cheesy.
There it is, there it is. Ooh, that looks good. Oh, that looks good.
Oh, yeah. Let's see if this stands up to your recipe.
I'll see. Oh, that's good.
I really love chicken and sausage gumbo because you get that smokiness, you get the tenderness of the chicken. It's just a great gumbo. Oh, yeah. I am gonna make my chicken and sausage gumbo. So I'm dicing up my Trinity, which is the start of flavor for any gumbo. Celery, my bell pepper, and I've already diced some onion, and I have some garlic to mince as well. So I have some pecan smoked and dewy sausage. It's a smoked sausage that has a little heat to it, and a dewy sausage is what you normally find in a gumbo, but you can use any smoked sausage that you have on hand. So I'm gonna start off by searing my meat first, add just a little bit of canola oil to my Dutch oven here, searing my sausage. The whole purpose and the beauty of gumbo is that it's just like layers of flavor. So when you eat gumbo, you are really tasting different layers of the process. It's just such a flavorful one-pot dish. So I'm just gonna cook off this sausage just a little bit, just get it nice and brown and release some of that oil. While that's cooking, I'm gonna season my chicken with a little salt and pepper. Pull my sausage out now. Some of that fat has rendered out. Add that seasoned chicken breast and chicken thigh. Using the white and the dark meat for variations of flavor and texture. I'm just gonna sear both sides until they're golden brown. So gumbo is literally a melting pot. The origins of gumbo can be questioned, but from my understanding, the origins of gumbo is in West Africa, but there are some French and German Creole influences. So I've seared both sides. This kitchen is starting to smell amazing. All right. Now, arguably the most important part of a gumbo, the roux. I'm making a chocolate roux. That means it's gonna be a deep, deep, rich, nutty roux. You gotta start off with half a cup of all-purpose flour and a half a cup of canola oil. The roux is so significant to a gumbo. It's because it's one of the most important flavor notes in a gumbo. It also acts as a thickener for the gumbo, and it's the reason the gumbo has that iconic color. The darker, the nuttier. A lot of people always ask me, how do you make your roux and do not burn it? It's because you have to babysit. You gotta keep stirring, you gotta keep your eye on it. If you walk away, it could literally burn in seconds. Once a roux goes too far, you can't fix it. So I say just do it right from the beginning so you don't have to go through that process again. All right, so we are there. It is nice and chocolatey. Now I'm going to add my veggies. Cool that roux down so it doesn't cook anymore. And again, you gotta make sure that you keep your eye on it. So I just dropped my diced veggies in there. Now, more layers of flavor. I'm adding some chicken bouillon in there. I like using chicken bouillon paste because it just gives me more concentrated chicken flavor. Look at that. Look, get into that pot, y'all. Come on, come on. Look at that. You see how chocolatey that is? How deep and rich that roux is? A little Cajun seasoning, some oregano, paprika, garlic, some cayenne pepper, and another thickener, which is gumbo filet. Gumbo filet is from the sassafras leaf, so it adds a little bit of earthiness and it works as a thickener. Some bay leaves, and now I'm gonna add the liquid, 6 cups of water. Give it a whisk. So this is gonna cook for about 30 to 45 minutes covered. All of those veggies are gonna get nice and soft, and then I'm gonna add the meat back in and cook it for an additional 30 minutes. So in total, this cooks for about an hour to an hour and a half. That is gonna be the perfect gumbo. Now I am making my collard greens stuffed shells. I've had some pasta shells that I cooked until it was al dente. It was just about 7 minutes. You're probably wondering how I got this idea of collard greens and pasta. Well, one day I thought about making lasagna for Brian, but he's like, I just don't want your typical lasagna. Well, can you do something different? Had some collard greens in the fridge that I really needed to get rid of. So I thought about it. Why not make a Southern style lasagna? Brian loved it. So for his birthday, I'm gonna do something a little different. Instead of making a lasagna, I'm stuffing it into shells. Now I am making the bechamel. So I'm melting 2 tablespoons of butter unsalted, and I'm gonna also add my 2 tablespoons of flour to help thicken the sauce. Okay? Now I'm going to slowly pour in my heavy cream. And that's 2 3/4 cups of heavy cream. And as it starts to heat, it's going to start to thicken up. I'm going to season this as well, a few pinches of salt and freshly cracked black pepper. My bechamel has thickened up. Now I'm going to add my collards. All right, just give it a taste. Make sure I don't need to add any more seasoning to it. That is delicious. All right, so I'm gonna let that cool. I've already diced 1 Vidalia onion. I've diced it pretty fine. Now I'm going to dice 2 cloves of garlic. So I like using a Vidalia onion because it's a little sweeter than your standard yellow onion. They're plentiful down here in the South, so I love using Vidalia onions. All right, so I've minced my garlic. Now I am going to move my cream of collards out of the way, bring another pot over here. I'm gonna add a little olive oil so nothing sticks. Now I'm gonna add my onions and garlic and get it sauteed down. Add a little salt to help bring out some of that moisture. It's like this, if I'm at someone's house or at a restaurant and I smell the smell of like onions and garlic cooking, I don't care what you're cooking, I want a plate. There is all of this flavor at the bottom of this pan, so I need to bring it up. Now I have some white wine that I like to use. Okay, so now that most of that alcohol is kind of cooked out, I'm gonna add my meat. I have a pound of 80-20 beef. That's 80% meat, 20% fat. Fat equals flavor. I have about 8 ounces or about a half a pound of country sausage. Now that's my little southern twist on there, is adding the country sausage and the collard greens. So country sausage is seasoned ground pork, also commonly called breakfast sausage. I like to also add in about a tablespoon of my house seasoning. Now that's garlic powder, onion powder, salt, pepper, and a little bit of paprika. Brian is going to enjoy this. Now I am making a meat sauce, so of course you gotta have some crushed tomatoes. And so this is something that I like to do, and this is what my mom has always done, is add a little sugar to help balance out the acidity. And then I'm also gonna add a half a cup of chicken broth. So I'm gonna let this simmer for about 20 minutes until it gets nice and thick. Now, the longer you let it simmer, the more concentrated that flavor gets. So you can do it a little longer, but Brian is not gonna be out for too long, so 20 minutes will do for me. All right, that looks good and it's starting to thicken up. I'm gonna turn the heat off and let it thicken up some more. And while I do that, let me take my cheesecake out because it's done. Oh, this is gonna be a great birthday for Brian. I left the door open and it's been cooling and coming to temp in the oven without the heat. So what I'm gonna do now is gonna take it out the water bath and let it cool down over here. Oh, look how beautiful this cheesecake is. It's art. Wow, all right, while this cools down, I'm gonna assemble my shells. So I have my 9x13 dish here that I have sprayed with a little nonstick. So this is how I'm gonna do this. I have my meat gravy here. Put a little bit at the bottom first, just kind of like you do a lasagna, so your pasta shells don't stick to your pan. Take a little bit of that tomato sauce, stuff it into the shell, and line them up. What I'm gonna do next is just get my cream of collards and just spoon it on top. And don't skimp with this, just put it all on top. It's just the more, the merrier. Now I'm gonna take some of this Asiago cheese, spread that Asiago on top. Cover this. All right, 350, covered for 30 minutes. It's gonna be all bubbly and browned on top. I'm hungry right now. All right, so my shells have been cooking for 30 minutes. I'm going to uncover them and crank the oven up to 375 so I can really get the party started. All right, I can smell those stuffed shells in there. I'm pretty sure they are done. Oh, yeah, baby. These are done. Look at that. Look how beautifully torched and browned these stuffed shells are. Look at all that bubbling sauce. It's a party. It's a birthday party in a casserole dish. You all know how much my Gullah Geechee heritage means to me. So today, we're talking about West African peanut stew. All right, so I have minced up about a tablespoon of ginger. I'm gonna mince up 4 garlic cloves. Now I'm gonna dice 1 whole onion. All right, and I have a Scotch bonnet pepper. West African cuisine is known to be a little bit more spicy, but because I'm adding sweet potatoes, that natural sweetness is gonna offset the spiciness from the Scotch bonnet. Now, at home, I wouldn't advise you guys to do this without gloves. I am a professional, but I will wash my hands. All right, so I have a whole chicken here. That's about a 6-pound chicken. I've cut it up into 10 pieces. That's your thighs, your legs, your wings, and your breast cut in half. All right, now I'm gonna season my chicken. Simple seasoning, salt and pepper. All right, I'm gonna head over to my stove. I have my Dutch oven here. I'm gonna add some vegetable oil and get a nice sear on my chicken pieces. I'm gonna go skin side down first to get a nice crispy skin on the chicken. So my chicken is brown on this side. I'm just gonna flip it Look at, the flavors are starting to build at the bottom of this pot. When you think about West African stews and Gullah stews, when we make our stews, the meat is basically on the bone. My grandmother tell you it's because all the flavor is in the bone. All right, so my second batch is ready to come out. I'm not cooking the chicken all the way through. I'm just getting a nice brown sear on both sides because the chicken will cook all the way through once I add my other ingredients and cover it. Now it's time to get my veggies in there. Got the onions, the garlic, the Scotch bonnet. It's all gonna cook in the flavors from that stuff stuck at the bottom of the pan. Let me switch over tools now, because now I got to get to scraping. I'm gonna get all that flavor up. And if some of it is still stuck on, don't worry about it. I'm gonna start adding in liquids. And that liquid is gonna also help get some of that nice seasoning from the chicken up from the bottom of the pot. Right now I'm gonna add in 2 cubes of chicken bouillon, a teaspoon of tomato paste. I'm gonna add this 15-ounce can of tomato sauce. Give it a stir before I add in my water. Okay. And it's called West African peanut stew for a reason, because there's peanut butter in there. And in West Africa, they call it ground nut. So I'm gonna add about a cup of ground nut or peanut butter. All right, now I'm gonna add in 4 cups of water to kind of dilute some of that tomato and peanut butter. And now is the time I'm gonna add the chicken back. And while this cooks up, I'm gonna cover this and let this simmer while I cut up my veggies. So I have a small bunch here of collard greens. I'm gonna just give it a little chiffonade. That just means I'm gonna cut them into small ribbons. I have 2 sweet potatoes. I'm gonna make it to like 1-inch chunks. And I have 2 Roma tomatoes that I'm gonna cut up into chunks. And I like using Roma tomatoes because they're firm and easy to cut. All right, so it smells incredible in here. Smell the tomato, the chicken, everything. Look at that. Look at the color. That peanut butter has kind of blended in with the tomato sauce. I'm gonna add in my veggies now, that Roma tomato, the sweet potatoes, and the collards. It may look like a lot, but this is all gonna cook down. All right, so I am gonna cover this and let this simmer on low. I'm gonna let it simmer for about 25 to 30 minutes or until I can pierce the sweet potatoes with a fork. I smell this stew going. Man, oh man. Oh, that smells incredible. How I know this stew is done is when if I take one of those little sweet potatoes and if my fork goes through it easily, it's done. That is solid. How about a lasagna dip? I use the already cooked lasagna sheets, fry it, and use that to dip the lasagna dip with. Oh, this is gonna be great. This is gonna be great. I'm starting off with the bell pepper. I'm just gonna dice this up pretty finely. I'm gonna saute the bell peppers, the onions, and the garlic with my beef and Italian sausage. I'm gonna make a meat sauce with that. I'm gonna chop up my onion, and I have 2 cloves of garlic that I'm gonna mince up. All right, so I've got my onions, my bell pepper, my garlic minced up. I'm gonna come over here and fry it up. Hit my pan with some olive oil. My pot is hot. These. A little salt, help soften them up. The smell of something good starting, I'll tell you, as soon as oil hits garlic and onion, just unlocks all of your senses. So this is mild Italian sausage that I have here and 80-20 ground beef. And what I like to do is break down my meat so it will no longer kind of be in that sausage link form. It smells incredible in here. And my favorite part of lasagna is this stuff, the meat, the cheese, and the ricotta. I mean, I like the pasta, but if I could just eat the meat and the cheese, that's what I want to do. So my meat has browned. Now it's time to build this sauce. I have some leftover pasta sauce here. This is about 6 ounces of tomato paste. All right, I'm just gonna add just a little bit of water. I'm gonna eyeball it. Of course, we gotta season it. Some salt, pepper, a teaspoon of sugar. Sugar helps cut the acidity. And so, I mean, my mom always added sugar in her pasta sauces, so I've been doing it ever since. A little bit of sugar goes a long way in tomato sauce. So I'm gonna let this cook down for about 5 to 10 minutes. While that's cooking down, I'm gonna make my bechamel sauce. I got 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter. I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of flour. I'm gonna add in about a cup of whole milk. And with the bechamel sauce, you definitely wanna keep whisking because you don't want it to burn at the bottom. This is starting to thicken up. I got some leftover Parmesan cheese, so I'm just gonna put that in there. And I'm gonna season this sauce. About a half a tablespoon of garlic powder, a little bit of Italian seasoning. You don't need it too much because dried herbs go a long way. Let me hit it up with a pinch of salt and some cracked black pepper. All right, so I'm gonna turn that heat off, grab my skillet, and assemble this dip. So take some of the bechamel sauce and just put it on top. I love to experiment in the kitchen. You know, I've been like that since I was younger. I think I've been like this my whole life. I just never was the type to kind of like go along with the program. I've always wanted to just do my own thing and kind of like go against the grain. Add it on the corner just like that. I'm getting all of that. All right, I got some whole milk ricotta here that I had in my fridge. I'm not gonna do anything special to this. I'm just gonna dollop it right on top. I love ricotta. Something about the flavor of it. It's gonna give it a really nice creamy texture when it cooks. That's it. All right, got some Italian blend cheese here. So when this melts, it's gonna get all bubbly. It's gonna rise up. This is gonna brown on top. It's gonna be cheesy. Last but not least, I'm going to cut up some fresh parsley, just to add a little bit of greenery, a little herbiness. Oh, look at that, y'all. My oven is preheated to 375. I wanna bake this until it gets golden brown. I think it'll take about 30 minutes. And I also, because I know how my lasagna likes to spill over, I have a sheet pan at the bottom there to catch any of those drippings. Got some lasagna sheets here. We're gonna make lasagna chips. Let me grab my dip. Oh, y'all. All right, let me grab a plate. I have to sit down and really enjoy the creation I just made. Vegetable lasagna, and I'm using yellow squash and zucchini. I'm cutting my vegetables on a slight bias here. Add some olive oil and some salt and pepper. Give it a little mix. My grill is nice and hot. I'm not gonna leave them on the grill too long, just until they get that nice little char lines on there. Remember, the veggies are gonna continue to cook in the oven. You know, I'm a Southern woman and I eat a lot of Southern food. It's nice to change it up sometimes. And actually, growing up, my mom's favorite meal to make was lasagna. And that's how I learned how to make lasagna. And she learned how to make lasagna from her Uncle Tony. And I remember Uncle Tony, he was actually my favorite uncle before he passed away, and he could make a mean lasagna. While these grill, I'm gonna get started on my sauce. Olive oil, fresh garlic, tomato paste. I'm using crushed tomatoes, paste, and tomato sauce. I like a really chunky sauce. And because I'm not using meat and I'm using vegetables, I need something with little substance. Tomato sauce. Crushed tomatoes, and that gives you that really nice fresh tomatoey flavor, and it's gonna give this sauce a really great texture. Looks like my veggies need to be flipped. You see, that's all I wanted to do was get those nice grilled lines. You always think lasagna is very heavy. Vegetable lasagna is very light, very flavorful, and adding these grill marks, you're gonna get some of that grill flavor. Let the other side grill. Continue with my sauce. Red wine, 1/3 cup. It makes it really, really robust. And don't worry about it, the alcohol will cook out and all of the flavors will remain. Tablespoon of Italian seasoning, a half a teaspoon of ground fennel. It just gives it this nice little like licorice flavor that I really like. Oh, those are beautiful. One bay leaf, salt and pepper. And because tomato sauce is very acidic, I like to add sugar. I say about 2 teaspoons. Some fresh parsley, give it a chop, add it to the pot. In 20 minutes, this is gonna be very, very delicious. But if you have the time, if you wanna cook it earlier in the day, you can. It's gonna be even more delicious, but it's fine in 20 minutes. All right, put that on, let me get started on my ricotta. So I like to use about a pound of ricotta. I'm transporting myself to Italy. And oh, I can't wait till I add the mozzarella. A nice helping of grated Parmesan, some mozzarella. I like using fresh mozzarella because it has a little less moisture, and once it melts, it's gonna have a really nice stretch. I need to add some salt, about a half a cup of milk. Like with anything that I cook, I like building layers of flavor, and lasagna is exactly that, layers of flavor. The thing about ricotta cheese is that it can really stretch and get really liquidy if you don't add an egg. I smell the char on the veggies, I smell that sauce going back there. I'm really excited about this lasagna. My ricotta mixture is done. Let me get my sauce and start building this lasagna. I've got my 9x13 casserole dish, and I'm using oven-ready lasagna. When I first started making lasagnas, you have to boil it and deal with that flimsy little pasta and everything's slipping and everything's going all over the place. You don't have to worry about that because these lasagna sheets are dry. The first thing I like to do is add a little sauce in the casserole dish because it helps prevent the pasta from sticking. Mix it around here. Now I'm gonna add my oven-ready lasagna sheets. Fit it to however you like. It's like kind of like a puzzle. There you go. Another layer of sauce. Adding my veggies. Now this lovely ricotta mixture. Whew. So that looks good. I'm just gonna keep doing the same thing until I get to the very top or until I run out of noodles. I like to make a little design on the top because it's, you know, you see the top layer, so try to make it cute. That same fresh mozzarella I used in the ricotta mixture, it's gonna get nice and golden and melty. Parmesan cheese. Fresh basil. I like the flavor of sweet basil, especially with a good pasta sauce. With lasagna, it's always best to start off with it covered so the noodles and the sauce and everything melts and gets nice and cooked. Then I uncover it and let it bake for an additional 15 minutes so all the cheese will melt on top and it's gonna get nice and golden brown. It's time to uncover my lasagna. Yes, whew, that smells delicious. Oh, baby. I immediately smell the sauce, I'm smelling the basil, I smell the fresh veggies. That needs about 15 more minutes. I just want the top to get nice, brown, and bubbly. My lasagna is done. Oh, look at that. This is gorgeous. It's nice and brown on top. The cheese has nicely melted. Oh, wow. Did y'all bring your appetite?
Of course we did.
Yeah.
The oldest boy will get his first corner, okay? This is a big piece.
Yeah.
He's a fireman, you know, he deserves this. He's been saving lives.
Yeah. Oh, amazing.
That's nice.
Look at all those layers.
That look really good.
Hey guys, it's Kardea Brown and welcome to my home kitchen here on Edisto Island, South Carolina. We are making Southern chicken and dumplings today. It is a chicken and vegetable stew with pillowy soft chive dumplings on top. You ready to cook? Let's go. So we have our Dutch oven here heated to medium-high heat. If you do not have a Dutch oven, you can use a large deep pot. Let's take 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter and melt it into our pot. While that's melting, let's talk about our chicken. I have 6 boneless, skinless chicken thighs here. Just a pinch of salt and pepper on both sides. My mom used to use whole chicken cut into pieces, but today in this class, we're using boneless, skinless chicken thighs. Let's wash our hands. Our butter is melted. Let's add in our chicken. And I like using boneless, skinless chicken thighs because it's easier to shred at the end. We're gonna let this sear on one side for 3 minutes. While that's searing, let's go over to our cutting board. So for our vegetables, we have carrots, celery, and an onion. All right, let's chop our carrots. I'd say let's cut them about a ½ inch thick. If you like bigger chunks of carrot, you can do that as well. Put your carrots into a bowl. Now we have our celery. And we're gonna cut our celery the same, about a ½ inch thick. All right, guys, let's turn our chicken. The chicken should be brown on this side, and it is. Your pot may create a hot spot. I see that this side of the pot is a little hotter, so let's just rotate. Take the more brown pieces and move them to the back. Okay. While that's cooking on this side, let's go back to our cutting board. Let's chop the rest of our celery. Line up your celery stalks together and just dice this way. Keeping those fingers tucked. Use the back of your knife to scrape. Never use this side of your knife. You will dull your knife. Okay. All right, gather up your celery, put it into the bowl with your carrots. Let's not forget about our onion. Okay. We're gonna dice our onion a little smaller than the carrot and the celery. Okay, put your onions in a bowl. Let's head back to the stove. Okay, let's check on our chicken. Should be golden brown on both sides, and they are. So let's remove the chicken and put it on a tray. What we're gonna do now is cook our vegetables in the remnants of the chicken. I don't know about you, but this kitchen smells amazing. Okay. So you may have noticed some of your butter may have burnt off. That's okay. You can add 2 more tablespoons of butter. That to melt. What we want to do here is loosen up some of that brown stuck on stuff because that's where all the seasoning and flavor is. Okay. Let's take our veggies and put it into our Dutch oven. Okay. Give it a mix and make sure you're scraping as you mix, getting up all of that stuck on flavor. Let's add a little bit more salt and pepper. Generous pinch. All right. Give it a mix, and we're going to let this cook for 3 more minutes. What we're doing here is just cooking until the onion turns slightly translucent. Remember, this is a soup, so a lot of the cooking is going to happen once we add in our liquid. And you want to keep stirring at this point because you don't want your onions to stick to your pot. Stir, scrape, stir and scrape. That looks good to me. Let's grab our flour. You should have 2 tablespoons. Put it into your pot. The flour is going to help thicken up our soup. Give it a stir. While this softens, let's head back to our cutting board and chop 2 cloves of garlic. I like adding garlic at this point because garlic loses its intensity the longer you cook it. So I like adding in garlic right before the liquid goes into our pot. Okay, we're just giving it a rough chop. Nothing fancy, guys. All right, let's take our garlic back to the pot. Add your garlic to the pot, give it a stir. Ooh, you see, as soon as that garlic hits the fat and the butter and the heat, wow, it smells amazing. Let's add in 6 cups of chicken stock. Bring it to a slight boil, so you may have to turn up the heat on your pot. Give it a stir. Loosen up any of that stuck on goodness from the sides. I like to use my wooden spoon and do that. Let's add in our bay leaf. 1 should do the trick. Okay, let's add our chicken back to the pot. And what my mom always loved to do, get some of that chicken juice and put it right in the pot. Oh, that looks pretty, guys. All right, hit pause and meet me back here once your stock is boiled. All right, our stock is boiling. Let's reduce the heat and allow this to simmer for 45 minutes. While this is simmering, let's go over and make our chive dumplings. We have 1 cup of all-purpose flour. Level it off with your finger. Add it to your bowl. 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And a half a teaspoon of kosher salt. Give it a whisk. Let's add in 2 tablespoons of vegetable shortening, and you can cut that in with a fork. You want to cut in your shortening with the fork until your shortening turns into the size of a pea. Let's add in our buttermilk. You should have 2/3 cup of buttermilk. Okay, give it a whisk. All right, let's dice a bunch of chives. Okay, you want to dice them fairly fine. This is a little different from my mom's recipe. She didn't use chives, but I love the oniony flavor of a chive. Okay. All right, that should be about 2 tablespoons. Add it to your bowl. Okay. Let's fold in our chives. And you just want to fold until your chives are thoroughly incorporated. Okay. That looks good to me. Hit pause and meet me back at the stove when 45 minutes is up. All right, so it's been 45 minutes. Let's remove our top and shred the chicken. I like to shred the chicken with 2 forks, that's it. Make sure your heat is turned down to low. And your chicken should easily shred with a fork. I like to shred my chicken pretty much completely. I like to leave some chunks of chicken, but make sure that most of your chicken is shredded. And you can do this to your liking. A little chunky, a little shredded, you know, a good mixture of both. Okay, that looks good. Now let's drop in our dumpling mixture. I like to spray my spoons with a little cooking spray before adding in this dumpling mixture. That will help the dumpling fall right into your soup. Look. That's it. Nothing left on the spoon. And these don't have to be perfect. My mom's dumplings were never perfect. But they taste amazing. I'm gonna try to get about 6 to 8 dumplings out of this mixture. It just depends on you and how big you like your dumplings. But this mixture should yield about 6 to 8 dumplings, medium size. We're gonna cover the pot and let it go for an additional 15 minutes. Pause and meet me back here when it's ready. All right, so it's been 15 minutes. Let's check on our chicken and dumplings. Oh, wow, look at that. Smells incredible. All right, let's head over and serve this in a bowl. Wow. All right, before we put our chicken and dumplings into a bowl, this is what I like to do. I like to add a little bit more greenery on top. So I'm gonna take some fresh parsley and give it a rough chop. Just adds a pop of color to your bowl. Grab your bowl and a ladle. I like to grab the meat and the soup first and then put my dumplings on top. Oh, I'm getting real hungry. Got my little dumpling right there. I think I can put one more in there. All right. Let's get your parsley and just sprinkle on top. Let's give it a taste. Make sure you blow it off. It may be a little hot. Takes me back to my childhood. Incredible. It's well seasoned. The chives and the dumplings, they're just melt in your mouth. You get some of that oniony flavor. You get the robust flavor of the veggies, the carrots, the celery. The chicken thighs just adds another layer of flavor in there. This is what you call chicken and dumplings. I'm gonna head over to my stove here and make the roux. And a roux is just basically flour and some type of fat. It thickens it up. It gives it flavor. It gives it color. I got about a cup of canola oil. You need an oil with a high smoke point because it burns quickly. And the thing about a roux is you gotta stand by that pot. 1 cup of flour. Break down the oil and the flour. I have my Dutch oven on about a medium-high heat. And what I'm doing right now is actually burning the flour and the oil. I know that sounds crazy, but that's the start of a roux. You gotta brown it. But for Gullah Gumbo, it's gonna be on the lighter side because I'm not cooking the roux as long, but it's still gonna have lots of flavor. And I'm starting to see that peanut butter color that I'm looking for. And it's just basically that flour is just, you know, browning with the oil. So keep scraping. And if you start to see that it's burning a little too quickly, turn your heat down just a little bit. And we're almost there. All right, I'm gonna add my veggies in now and cook my veggies down with the roux. Look at that. Ooh, what I'd like to do right now is start adding in my spices. A few pinches of salt, black pepper. And because it wouldn't be me if I didn't add my house seasoning, some smoked paprika, onion powder, garlic powder. All right, so I'm adding a pinch of mace. Mace is almost like nutmeg. It smells like nutmeg, it's very bright. And if you can't find mace, you can always use nutmeg. A pinch of gumbo filet. Gumbo filet is ground sassafras plant, all right? I'm gonna add 2 bay leaves in there. Now I'm gonna grab my garlic and tomatoes. And I like to add in my garlic and tomatoes at this point because I don't wanna cook out that garlic flavor. I want it to be really pronounced in the gumbo. And tomatoes cook down fairly quickly, so I like to add it in at this point as well. Now for the liquid. I'm gonna add in about 3 cups of seafood stock. So just about this whole box, leave a cup. I'm also adding about 3 cups of chicken stock. And the reason I'm mixing the stocks is because I'm adding smoked turkey and I'm also adding seafood. Gotta add the shrimp. It wouldn't be Gullah if I didn't. All right, I'm gonna bring this to a rolling boil. I'm gonna also add smoked turkey wing. My grandmama and them always added some type of smoked meat to help enhance the flavor of whatever stew they're making. Okay, so I'm gonna let this go uncovered, just let it simmer. After an hour, I'm gonna add the lima beans. I'm gonna let the lima beans cook up in this. And then last but not least, you know I'm gonna throw in some shrimp. Of course, I'm gonna add traditional Gullah crab rice to the top of that gumbo. I'm gonna heat up 2 cups of chicken stock because it infuses flavor into the rice. This is about half of this box. For every 1 cup of rice, you use 2 cups of liquid. And it's important to rinse your rice. Let me tell you why. You gotta get that starch off the rice. Once my water runs clear, you know you got most of the starch off. My stock has come to a boil. I'm gonna add my rice, bring it down to a simmer and cover it. All right, while that goes for about 15 minutes, I'm gonna cut up my Trinity. Got a tomato I'm gonna use a little later, and of course, garlic. Crab rice tastes just like it sounds. It's crab meat and rice. Now we like to use blue crab claw meat because it evokes more of that crabby flavor. If you wanna be traditional, you gotta use claw meat. And if you wanna go old school, you'll sit there and crack some blue crabs and add that meat into the rice. That's how my great-grandparents used to do it. Okay, got about half of this bell pepper that I'm dicing up finally. All right, add it to this bowl. And I got 1 clove of garlic, of course. Y'all know I like my garlic. You know what, to make life easier, I'm just gonna add the garlic to the veggies right there. Right now, there's so much flavor going on here, everything is just gonna meld together and it's gonna be awesome. Let's get this veggie sauteed. What I like to do is start my crab rice with a little butter and oil. I like to use the combination of 2 types of fat. Butter has a little bit more water content. So to really get a nice fry on my veggies, I like to add oil. And while that's getting hot, it's been about 15 minutes. Let's see if the rice is done. My rice is nice and fluffy. Let me tell you another secret to getting the perfect fluffy rice. After it's done, you turn the heat off, put your top back on, and let it steam off the heat. Your rice will be nice and fluffy and not overcooked. Let me add the onions, the garlic, and the celery. A little salt to draw out some of that water. Ooh, smells so good. All right, so I'm just cooking it till it gets a little softened and the onions turn translucent. I'm gonna take my rice, add the rice to the pot. My grandmother and my mom, they call everything in the house a pot. Even though it's a pan, it's a pot. Get all the crusty stuff. We're almost like making fried rice. Turn my heat down just a little bit. I'm gonna grab my crab meat. This is a pound of crab claw meat. To really get that crab flavor, you gotta use the claw meat. I wanna grab some of my house seasoning, 2 heavy pinches of that. And last but not least, tomatoes. A pop of freshness. It's gonna also give it a pop of color. Crab meat, rice, bell pepper. I tell you, this is a meal in itself. Let me close this up right now, because I tell you, I'm about to sit down and eat a bowl of that by itself. So this has been going on for about an hour. Let me add my lima beans. Ooh, what is Gullah Gumbo without lima beans? Every stew, every soup my grandmother makes, she adds lima beans. And that's why I add lima beans to my gumbo. This turkey is starting to loosen up a little bit. I'm gonna pull that turkey apart, and it's gonna be a part of the meat too. The color is beautiful. Those lima beans look great. I got a pound of shrimp that I've cleaned, deveined it, deshelled. And had I put the shrimp in earlier in the process, it just would have been overcooked. And who wants tough shrimp? No, 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 no. Now I'm gonna take my turkey wing out and shred it and put it back into my Gullah Gumbo. Not only do you get a bite of shrimp, you're also gonna get a little bite of smoked turkey. I'm gonna put the bone back in there with the shredded meat. I'm shredding about 1 cup of white cheddar, and I'm all about building flavors, even if it's in a dip. I want to get some of that creamy sharpness from the white cheddar and that nutty richness from the Asiago cheese, and I'm making sure I don't scrape my fingers. Ooh, that looks beautiful. I'm gonna use 8 ounces of room temp cream cheese. If you use cold, you'll get little clumps of cream cheese throughout your dip. You don't want that to happen. A 1/2 cup mayo, a 1/2 cup of sour cream, and the sour cream is gonna add some tanginess that I think works really well with that sharp cheddar. About that much heavy cream, a tablespoon lemon juice, and that's like 1/2 lemon. Drop in this cheddar and Asiago cheese. I love the smell of fresh crab meat, and I'm using claw meat because I really want the crab to be the star of the show. It's sweet, and it's gonna push through all the sharpness and the creaminess of the cheeses. I'm getting into this now, okay? I'm gonna add in some seafood seasoning. Gotta add a little hot sauce to this. It's gonna be really flavorful with a little kick of heat. Fold it in and see, and this is why I said it was so important to have room temp ingredients, because look how that's just effortlessly folding together. Okay, next step, transfer it into this 1-quart baking dish and pop it in the oven. Oh, wow. And you know what? I wanna add some more cheese on top. Just spread that on top. This looks great. I'm gonna pop this in the oven. I have it preheated to 400 degrees. I'm gonna bake it for 20 to 25 minutes. I think my crab dip is done. Woo! Hot mama! Look at that. The guys are gonna love this. Get into it. How about that crab dip?
It's awesome. We're gonna patent that.
I'm making super-decadent macaroni and cheese. So I have a box of elbow pasta. You can't go wrong with elbow pasta. I'm going to boil this for 7 minutes until it's al dente. It's gonna cook in the oven. So if you overcook your pasta on top of the stove, you're gonna have some really mushy macaroni and cheese, and you don't want that. All right, so I'm gonna let this boil, and I got some cheese to shred. All right, so I have sharp cheddar and extra sharp cheddar. Instead of using pre-shredded cheese, I just like to shred my own. Old school is the way to go. This shredded cheese will be the base of my cheese sauce. Right, let me pause, my pasta is ready. Right, so I rinsed it with some cold water to stop the cooking process, and just setting it back there. Gotta finish up with this cheese. So what I do is just eyeball it. All right, and I'm using the extra sharp cheddar to cut into small cubes. I'll add the cubes right before it goes in the oven. Gotta make a cheese sauce. I'm gonna head over to my stove. I am making a cheese sauce The fancy term for it would be a bechamel, which is a roux. It's basically gonna thicken up my cheese sauce. So I have a half a stick of unsalted butter. I'm gonna add to this a few pinches of flour. My grandmother never measured this. She just put it in there. So now I'm gonna add 2 cups of whole milk, a half a cup of heavy cream. Bring this to a rolling boil. It should slightly thicken up as the heat rises. I'm gonna add my sharp cheddar cheese now. I reserved a little bit because I like to top it right before I put it in the oven. This is the consistency I want. Almost like a nacho cheese consistency. Okay, my grandmother does not use cream cheese, but I like using cream cheese because cream cheese just adds a slight tang. I'm gonna add a pinch of salt, pepper, and garlic. Just added my garlic powder. I'm gonna add some freshly cracked black pepper and a pinch of salt. You don't wanna over salt your macaroni and cheese. All right, I'm gonna take it over here. I'm gonna put my elbow pasta in my pot. I'm gonna do all the mixing in this pot. Grab my spoon back here. You hear that? You hear that? You know you got some good macaroni and cheese. Whoo, look at this, y'all. Woo-hoo. All right, so last but not least, I'm gonna add in 2 eggs. I'm gonna whisk it in there with my sour cream. My grandmother doesn't put sour cream. I find that sour cream just elevates that tanginess from the extra sharp cheddar, so I like using that sour cream in there. And this is what makes Southern macaroni and cheese different from other macaroni and cheeses. It's the egg. It's what's gonna hold the macaroni and cheese together. Because essentially, macaroni and cheese is a casserole. Fold in the egg. I have a 9x13 casserole dish that I put some melted butter in there. Just gonna pour that directly to my casserole dish. So now it's the time to add the cube extra sharp cheddar. Last but not least, the reserved sharp cheddar. All right, so I have my oven preheated to 350. I'm gonna bake this uncovered until it gets slightly golden brown on top and all the cheese has melted. Once that happens, I'm gonna get some foil and loosely cover it with foil and bake it for an additional 15 minutes to cook the center. Okay. I'm pulling out my macaroni and cheese. Ooh, I tell you, it smells delicious. You wanna see it? Look. Look at that. It looks like my grandma's. It actually looks a little better. It looks good. Grandma, you didn't hear that. Yours is still good.
Oh, this smells amazing.
All right, y'all ready to dig in?
Yes. The mac and cheese is amazing.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
creamy and cheesy. Wow.